anyways, like you said, moving into the open source thing, because Microsoft is saying Google's a monopoly. There's a number of open source people who it's more the floss fluff people who are doing that. But there's a number of people who, as of late, are just painting this big bullseye on the back of Google and going, the evil empire monopoly fire. And there's some validity to some of their arguments, but on the other hand, I'm not so sure I see it. And I'm not a Google fanboy. There's a lot of things about Google I don't like. I don't like the fact that Google kind of wants one master account to follow all my Google services around. I know that's great for Google, but that's not what I want.
It's not as bad as Facebook Connect.
Yeah, I know. It's like that's the thing. The only reason I don't get, oh dear God, mad at Google for that is because there's this horrible thing that's 10 times worse called Facebook. And then I'm like, well, at least they're not like Facebook. There are ways for me to get around it with Google. They're hard, but there are ways. But on the other hand, yeah. But some of the things the open source purists want Google to do, I'm like, why do they need to do that? They consider Gmail evil, not because it's this draconian lock-in system that you can't get any of your emails out of, but because they can't download the Gmail source code and set up their own Gmail server that isn't Gmail.
Well, I mean, those are the kind of people who like to log into their servers and read all their mail from Emacs.
Yeah, well, okay, but that's not what Gmail was designed for. And I can get every single email that's it. Every time somebody talks about Gmail crashing, I'm like, why didn't you back up your Gmail? It's not like Google made it hard for you to do. It's IMAP accessible. Put it all on your local T-Bird once a week. There you go. Your email's backed up. It's not hard. Click, drag. You can even automate that process.
Especially since they let it all be done for free, unlike a lot of other stuff like that.
Well, and then there's the people that say, well, I don't want Google reading all my email. Well, then don't have a Gmail account. It's the same thing with the Yahoo account and Amazon account.
And for the people who don't want, a Gmail account, then, you could just set up your own server for mail or get some anonymous mail. I like Gmail. It's a great mail client.
Well, no, and I don't think the fact that they're providing a service, and I'm going to use the blasphemous word in open source, partly proprietary, because it is a partly proprietary service. It's very much an open core. It's fully accessible. They've built it on open protocols. But at the end of the day, it does run on Google service. On Google servers, it is a service that Google is providing. Rather than charging you money for it, they're giving it to you for free. But you're now a metric in their ad network that they monetize.
Yeah, and I'm largely okay with that. I mean, if it gets me everything for free. I'm sure a lot of people aren't, but as far as me, I mean, me, I give my full name away online. I don't really care about this.
Well, and that's the other thing. If you don't want Google to have your real name, your real address, your real everything, then here's what you do. Give your Google profile fake info and log into it through forwarding or through a cell phone in somebody else's name. It's not like it's hard to do. You don't have to give Google all the real information. You can actually anonymize your Google profile and put a physical firewall between it and you, where it's not impossible, but it's difficult with the way Google collects data to actually know it's you. And so if you're that paranoid, you can still use Google without using Google. You can't do that with Facebook, of course. Facebook wants your real name, your real birthday. They're like, we have determined that this name is fake. Well, it's fake on purpose, Facebook. And it's the same thing with their docs and the same thing with everything else.
It's worth it to me.
Well, no, and that's the privacy advocates who go, well, it may be worth it to you, but people don't understand the price tag that they're giving. They don't understand that they're giving their firstborn's food habits to Google. And I'm like, well, okay, educate those people not to be dumbasses. You know, it's the same thing with every.
You know what makes me sad? So there's the big campaign that Richard Stallman and a lot of people did for everyone to quit Facebook. And I knew a lot of people that said they would do this.
None of them did.
All of them came back.
Yeah, it's like they quit, then within 30 days they all came back.
Yeah, which is sad.
Well, no, see, that's the thing.
It's that addictive and that almost needed in this society.
Well, no, honestly, I know it makes me a cynic, but my honest opinion is privacy is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. And the reality is most people don't care. They care when it bites them in the ass. Then they're like, oh no, we need privacy back because I was a dumbass. And I'm like, honestly, I'm thinking two things need to happen. Okay, privacy's dead. That's not necessarily a good or bad thing. But for privacy to be dead like it is, society needs to make a shift. And that is, we don't punish people for being humans. Because that is something our society does. Oh, you made a mistake 20 years ago. You learned from it, you don't make that mistake anymore. But you made a mistake 20 years ago, so I can't hire you. That's a bad mindset, and that is the mindset in general of our HR people in our society. I personally don't care if somebody was a dumbass in college between the ages, or in high school. If somebody is a dumbass between the ages of 10 and 24, if they're a dumbass and they're just doing what dumbasses do, which is be dumbasses, somehow not kill themselves, and learn not to be a dumbass anymore, I don't really care. Because that means they're coming to me a lot wiser, a lot less green, and I don't have to have them make a dumbass mistake on my time and money. I am like, great, you've been a dumbass, you know not to be a dumbass anymore, come here. It's like, they're actually more valuable to me than people who have never done that, because they've made the mistake and learned from it, versus people who haven't made that mistake now and don't know that lesson. But that's not the mindset in general of our society. The mindset in general of our society is, you made a mistake, and I can't trust you because you're not perfect. I'm like, way to throw away one hell of a lot of experience. Because there are some things you only learn the hard way. I'm sorry. There is something to be said for the school of hard knocks. But, and used to, the people who had made all these dumbass mistakes in private were looked upon as value because you could tell just by talking to them. They had acquired some common sense and some knowledge. You didn't know how they got it, but you knew, okay, there's more going on up there now. And that, that was a desirable quality. Now that we're like shedding the spotlight on how that tends to happen, now all of a sudden all of those people are incredibly undesirable, and I don't know if society can make that shift, if they can look at it's like the special sauce at McDonald's. You don't really want to know how it's made, you just want it.
It's not just that, it's combining with the fact that in a job market with lots of unemployment, people are thinking you're gonna hire only the best, and so you're going to let every little thing bother you because you can only afford to hire so little. And so, if you talk about a while ago when people are willing to hire a lot more, then they can take that as a good thing. But when people are super nitpicky, they're going to view that as a nit to pick.
I have news for those people. The only person that if you dig deep enough, you're not going to be able to nitpick apart is somebody with no life, no social aspect, no people skills, and no ability whatsoever to function well in your work environment. Because anybody who doesn't have any of these problems doesn't have any of these skills, because the only way you don't ever do something, man, I wish I hadn't done that, is if you never do anything. If everybody's honest, looks in the mirror and goes, okay, at any point in the last blah years of life, did I ever do something that, what the hell was the matter with me? And if you're honest, if you answer that question honestly, short of people who never go out, never see anybody, they just sit in their little tiny box and never do anything, I don't think anybody can honestly answer that question. No, I've always done. Never have I ever made a mistake of any kind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it used to only be politicians. Now it's everybody applying for a job. And I wish that wasn't true for politicians also, because it keeps anybody we'd really want doing those jobs from ever running for election.
All right. Well,
Okay. Anything else to say on that?
We're running pretty. So let's get on to cloud computing.
Yeah. Well, cloud computing is actually more of the same crap. Unfortunately, it goes back to what we were saying with the Google thing. Okay. Well, no, I don't. The big thing everybody's afraid of with cloud computing is this data apocalypse. We're going to put everything on the cloud, and then the servers are going to crash, and human society is going to be set back 2,000 years because we've lost all the books.
What are you talking about? How can that? I mean, Amazon backs up like 3 times.
Well, no, but
they're for that to break, you would have to break.
Okay, here's their logic, and it ties back to the fact that we have a quote-unquote energy crisis, which we do, and that is, if we migrate all of this stuff onto the internet, where it's dependent upon having electricity and all of these things, eventually at some point, if we don't solve the energy crisis, we're not going to have enough electricity to power all of this stuff. Which means it's not going to be a priority, and we've lost all the digital copies of the books, and the many cases like they're talking about. Okay, the servers go down, and the stock market goes crazy because companies can't do business for 1 to 2 days while they restore the backups, and it's like they're panicists, is what I call them.
I don't know how plausible that's.
Their scenarios are plausible. Because they're thinking worst case scenario, which is something people are supposed to do. But at the end of the day, their scenarios are not completely unimaginable because I'm sorry, somebody else was doing something over here. But even if all their scenarios happen, what it comes down to is it's the job of the people who are entirely dependent on these cloud services to have a local backup so they don't go out of business for 1 to 2 days while they wait for the cloud to come back up, and have a backup plan. If you're entirely dependent on this one thing, then you're entirely dependent on this one thing, and that's what you've done. But their panic-y nature is that people don't understand if they access it from 5 different computers that it's not really in 5 different places. And I'm like, why there are people who I'm sure are that dumb. These are the people who go, I still have checks. Why is my checking account not empty? I think most of us realize if I'm accessing one place, my data is in one place. I don't have my 2 backups. I need a local copy and I need an off-site copy somewhere else, preferably in a different data center, but I won't know if it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to make everybody paranoid.
I think the thing is about cloud computing. You get the power of the server, you get that, but the computer is also going to be as powerful as the server was in a few years. So, just because cloud computing offers that and it's getting so powerful and so much data power doesn't mean that, I don't think that Chrome OS is going to succeed because it's ignoring the huge amount of power that we have right in front of us. You have a lot of processing power in your computer, and that could be, used more for than just a browser. So I think that we really need to just maybe we could switch a different bit, what the desktop is and what having a computer is, but it's not going fully cloud is the answer.
Personally, as technology stands now, I like the hybrid model, taking advantage of every.
I think that's always going to be how it is until computers no longer get better.
Well, and if anybody's wondering what the hybrid model is, I can actually give you an example of something most of you are probably using right now. If you use Google Contacts in any way, shape, or form right now, that's the hybrid model. You're accessing that client-side either via your home computer or your Android device or your iOS device. You're accessing your Google contacts. And if your friend updates their contact information, especially if you're using an Android phone, the phone number just updates in your phone. So your contacts have updated. They don't have to phone you and say, oh, my number's changed. It's like you just have the new number if they gave it to the contact system. Now, some people don't realize that, and then comes in the privacy concern that the other thing these people go nuts over, which is, well, maybe I didn't want to give all 50 billion people I gave my old phone number to. Maybe that's why I changed it, because I was trying to get rid of some stalkers. But it's like, well, then you shouldn't have updated it with Google. It's like, of course, anybody else can update it too. So there's a reason when I put anybody into my Google contacts, I put them under a code name instead of their actual name, because I don't want to force a push out they don't want to push out. But, oh well. Maybe I'm being paranoid. I don't know.